started her social enterprise when she was still very young, and she has brought on that flame of passion and flame to address problems through, startups and organizations and businesses to bring change. And as she would always say, we can change the world, just like we are inspired by Professor Yunus in one way or another. We can change the world. Not just we can, we will, and yes, we are changing the world. So to start off this panel discussion on no going back, and social business is the answer. So I would like to ask, and whoever you can answer first, what social business opportunities have you been seeing as a result of this pandemic? So you may cite examples in terms of industry or the manner of doing business or institutional or learning support and the size of the startups or the organizations. But what trends or trends of opportunities basically have you been seeing? Shall we say ladies first, or
I've always lived and breathed entrepreneurship, and I've always been telling people, like, foster your future, go and make the world a better place, go. And everybody's just like, there's so much risk in being an entrepreneur. And then 2020 came in, and everybody's just like, can you help me? I need to set up a business. But more than the change around everybody realizing that we can't be job seekers, we need to be job creators. More than that, what I love the most about all of these changes and the opportunities that are coming out of it is that it is almost a law now that when you build a business, it needs to create a positive impact. Because before, people thought that building a business was about making money or because you wanted the freedom. Now customers are demanding from us across the marketing message, the way we manage our teams, the impact we have in the community, and the side effects of our projects. And I've been saying that with like investors approaching us going, what social enterprise can I invest in? Customers are going, but what impact are you creating? What's the why behind your business? Like, tell us the story. So for me, I've seen this massive wave of goodness coming into the business world. Like, every business now has to have a positive impact, regardless of what industry and what country you're going into, which is something that all of us today in this panel, all 6 of us, have lived and breathed our whole life. But people used to say, well, we're crazy. Like, well, you're crazy. You're too positive. This would never happen. And now the whole world is doing it. So from my point of view, my experience, that's been the most incredible thing that has happened. It's forced every business to be ethical, to share their achievements, to give back, and build projects that are sustainable. So no short-term wins, it's about long-term wins. So that's like the biggest, like, I think achievement, I think that the world has gone through in the last 12 months.
Thank you, Paula. Dr. Faiz, Thailand is one of the places that's very entrepreneurial. So yeah.
I think you might be on mute, Dr. Faiz.
Yeah, that's my trademark. I always have to be told that the mic's off. Apologize. But, well, I can say it again, maybe in better ways now, better words. Well, no, I agree with Paula completely that this is the most transformational, 1 year that at least I've seen in my, 60 odd years. And there's nothing that could have prepared us for this. And so all the stuff that we talk about in, social impact and social business and doing business for solving social problems and so on, would often not have that immediacy, that sense of urgency that this event has immediately conferred. So in a way, we've been helped in more ways than one. But I must say that business is still about making money. Business has always been about making money, and business will remain about making money because, as I keep saying to everyone, there's no other social device that can create wealth. There's only one thing known to human society that actually creates wealth, and that's value exchange, business. Yeah. So the good thing about this new paradigm, the new capitalism, is that all the voices which spoke for social impact, which spoke for sort of social support, social value as a byproduct of business, are now being heard. So I completely agree. On the other hand, I may not perhaps completely say that this is we're still into that long-term thinking mode. There's a lot of stuff that we say and hear which still kind of wants us hankering for how it used to be. And this mental shift to no going back is what I think is our biggest challenge for the moment. So, and as you know, every challenge is an opportunity in reverse. So for us, the biggest task now is to make that evidence available, that actually no going back is actually a better choice than wanting to go back. So I'll just give you one quick example, Faisal, if you don't mind. We had AIT is probably also one of those few universities that has social businesses run by the UNICEF. So we had a therapeutic massage facility on campus. And when COVID struck, government put a ban on all kinds of, massages and any physical contact. And so we had these 4 women that completely had no other skills other than what we found out, than just being therapists. And 4 months, no income. And then we decided that we'd probably never be able to get these women back to the massage business in the same way it used to be. More protocols, more certifications, more public health barriers are going to be here for a while. So we said, what else can you girls do? And they said, well, we can cook. And so we ended up getting a small concession space at AIT and getting them started as cooks and cafeteria managers. Didn't work out, it turns out. That the moment regulations went soft, these women went back to their massage jobs.
Yeah.
So they were going back. We didn't want them to go back.
Yeah.
So now, this was a real life case. People will always want to go back to what they know as security and predictability and stability. Yeah. It was for us to basically, and where was the fault? We had not prepared these women for other than just one job skill in their lives. So this paradigm, folks, is about multiple skilling. It's about integrating everything you know into one set of marketable skills. So some people don't know they can write well. Some people don't know they're great conversationalists. Some people don't know they're great coordinators or organizers. They've done it for family and friends, but hey, these are careers, So that kind of grooming, this is our chance to move that short-termism, one-trick pony mechanisms into long-term, multi-skilling, multi-dimensional grooming programs. And so I don't want to take this entire session.
That's right.
But I think that's the kind of a mindset perhaps this session needs to also promote and encourage people to see where they can actually acquire more skills, more exposure, and then build that skill set into a much more marketable, which is social business.
Thank you, Dr. Faiz. And I want to move to you, Andy, because since you are the Negros Women for Tomorrow Foundation is directly engaged with a lot of women communities in Negros Island, and the issue of creating wealth and having multiple skills for them to be able to adapt is a very crucial element in your model. Andy?
Thanks, Faiz. And I agree with both Dr. Faiz and Paula that we've really been forced to reevaluate and rethink how we do things, and there's got to be a different way and a better way of doing things, and there's no going back. In terms of opportunities there, with the whole lockdown and everything, it's forced people to. Some businesses have been forced to close down. Some businesses have had to pivot and really find a new way because of the pandemic. And one opportunity I see there really, and one that we're trying to focus on now is in terms of food production and food security. And it's so ironic because when you say food security, there are areas where farmers are literally giving away their produce because they can't get it anywhere else. They're producing for one area, and because of all the travel restrictions, they can't send it to their markets. And it's such a huge waste because it's being produced, it's there, but there's no one to sell it to, and they can only consume so much. And then in other areas, they have a problem of, hey, we don't have food here because we used to rely on these farmers from different areas, and now we can't get it here. So that's one thing that we are, there's a big opportunity there, both in terms of connecting, some of our clients to markets, and also another opportunity there in helping our clients produce their own food. So in terms of both of urban gardening, that sort of thing. So there are, I think, big opportunities there.
So food is really, one of the biggest issues. Like, I mean, the food, agriculture, and energy nexus is really a big issue globally. And I think, this may not be related to what you're going to say, Prometheus, but I understand that the Grameen Australia, for example, has also projects related to food security. So in terms of, from where you are and from Grameen Australia's perspective or Dana Asia, like, what trends, are you seeing, like, in terms of opportunities?
The first thing I think I'd like to address here is taking two things from what Dr. Faiz said. Business being the strongest tool. And there hasn't been enough appreciation for what was previously called the social sector, now which is transformed to social entrepreneurship and social business, how dynamic this model itself is. I'll give you a quick example. We've got a very fascinating social business, social enterprise here in Australia, which goes by the name of Humanitics. Paula may be aware of it. So it's just two young guys who are fresh out of university, had extremely comfortable jobs with large corporates. They went ahead and created a ticketing platform, which no one sort of knew for years that these ticketing platforms to live events were accruing billions of dollars in fees. They intervened in the market. They set this up as a social business where, they were dedicating a portion of their revenue to go out to various social causes. Now they've focused it entirely on education. They were doing wonderful. We had from Grameen Australia's end, we had a wonderful partnership with them for many years. 2020 hits, COVID hits, and all of a sudden live events have disappeared. But here is a social enterprise which then transformed itself almost immediately and went into the live events which are happening online. And they genuinely started promoting this, and then the ticketing business has gradually started picking up for these web events that are happening. So even before a lot of regular businesses could actually adapt to these changes, they responded. And as such, this is the dynamism which this sector has, the social business or the social enterprise sector has, which it often goes unappreciated. And I think this is something which needs to be brought into sort of the regular or the mainstream understanding of doing business, that it does not have to be, mutually exclusive, right? They can both run hand in hand. And there are many such examples, and we must start getting that into the ethos of all entrepreneurs across the board. Now, in terms of, food security and security in general that's happening, it's an interesting question that you asked, Faisal. We were just having a review over the last week of the social safety net benefits that are going out right now. Just to give you a very startling figure, the average wage in Australia per week is $753. A pensioner is at about $472, and the poverty line right now is $455 per week, Australian dollars. The social safety net benefit, which goes out to a person who's basically, looking for employment, is only $307. So social safety net, for which the government over the last, I think, 4 days has announced $9 billion, and in the last 12 months or so has handed out $33 billion, is essentially not helping people. So people are effectively going hungry. Now, what do we do about it? So naturally, just pumping money into the system in its current form isn't working. So there must be a way in which you need to give the multiplier effect a different face. So Grameen Australia is essentially now trying to set up a pilot in Greater Melbourne region to introduce the Grameen microcredit model here. Microcredit in Australia has existed, or microfinance has existed in different forms, but the pure Grameen model hasn't. So I think that is what we need to go. The idea of just giving money out to people is simply not the answer. We have to start, putting in the the DNA of entrepreneurship of people, even if they haven't worked for 5 years, they're still not being given the opportunity. And the whole, as Professor Yunus, you're killing an entire generation of humans and their potential by simply giving out money, which to start off with is not enough. I think that's an example of, if we can get such, microcredit programs or microcredit models more effective in, say, a G20 country like Australia, I think that's where we need to address it. The business as a tool needs to be given a new face. And that is where we can go back.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point that you made there, Prometheus, like business have being the strongest tool. And then, of course, putting money is not enough. And this leads me to Callum here. I mean, in their work with Yunus Thailand, how they're working with, for example, corporations, like how corporations have transformed, for example, traditional corporate social responsibility into having social entrepreneurship or social business models into their programs. And especially, maybe you can also talk, Callum, about your initiatives in the south of Thailand.
Yeah, thanks so much, Faisal, and some really interesting points to kind of pick up on from everybody's comments. Just to give an initial framing point, perhaps, I think one thing that was initially said about the pandemic is that it's a leveler, right? That everybody was affected by this pandemic. But as we've seen it roll out and as we've seen the realities on the ground, in fact, it's not been a leveler whatsoever. The increase in inequality has really kind of defined this pandemic, wherever you've been, in Australia, in UK, in Bangladesh, in Philippines, in Thailand, wherever. So what we've seen is a huge increase in inequality. I think also, when we talk about what Andy was saying as well about access to markets as well, we've also seen the huge digitization of industries and the use of app delivery mechanisms and stuff like this. But again, this in theory has meant that producers can more easily access customers and have direct contact and basically shorten the distance between producers and end consumers. But in reality, in most cases, this has seen a kind of a real concentration of the market, where very large corporations have kind of dominated areas. And like Andy was saying, small producers haven't had that chance to kind of access markets, when the middleman markets have also been shut down as well. So I think that's just two key trends that I've kind of seen. In terms of corporate social responsibility and corporate social business, again, I think there's been different trends here. Like we can't deny that in some cases, what's been the first thing that many companies have cut when their revenues have gone down has also been their sustainability spending and CSR spending. So I don't think we can't fully paint a rosy picture of that. But I think also there has been with some companies demand to get more bang for your buck, if you like, in sustainability spending, where social business comes in. And also with companies, and I think this is getting stronger and stronger with the pandemic as well, there's also more demand from employees to work in more sustainable companies as well, and to work in a place where they can actually feel good about themselves as well. And also employees, particularly in kind of millennials and generations after that as well, they don't stay as long with one company as previous generations as well. So there's more demand on kind of keeping hold of employers. So this is an opportunity also that is kind of demand driven from the employee perspective for companies to be more sustainable. I think so to turn those kind of those challenges into opportunities, then from the digital side, there's a big opportunity there to support small producers to have better access to markets and to use digital channels. And this is something that we're doing in the southern border provinces, Thailand as well, where we're running a community-based incubator for 100 female agri entrepreneurs who are from villages that have been affected by COVID-19. And then also on the larger scale as well, we're running on the corporate side, we're running a social entrepreneurship program, which is an internal incubator into in a company that is basically supporting employees, and particularly the kind of younger but high rising employees, to create social business subsidiaries within that conglomerate as well. So I think that there are two kind of things that we can look at. I think just to make one, I know I talked quite a long time, but just to make one final point on this as well, particularly on inequality, what we also see is that on one side, people's savings have been completely reduced and as they've lost work or they've been really pushed to the edge. But on the other side, there's people, and maybe many people in this call as well, have found that their savings have hugely increased in the pandemic as well. They're not flying abroad, they're not going out for beers in the evening, etc. So how is this an opportunity to actually connect these two issues and create a real no going back movement? So the idea of public and community funded social bonds, for example, to fund social business is one opportunity. Rethinking about how we look at crowdfunding as well as another thing. And when we talk about action on the ground of no going back, as individuals, when we have more money in our bank account, do we spend that money going on a big fancy holiday after lockdown, or do we start thinking about what no going back individual actions can we actually do as well? So just to kind of put that out there as well.
I mean, like from what you were all saying in the past few minutes, I mean, it shows that the problems that we're seeing is really multifaceted and multidimensional, and like we are all in agreement that there needs to be like multiple scaling, for example, and that having business as the main tool to advance this massive wave of goodness, as what Paula said earlier, and of course, putting money is not enough. And that leads us to the next question, which is, so, I mean, you've started it, Callum, regarding, what's this, social entrepreneurship, which is a form of support.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
What Dr. Faiz and Andy are talking about, like the importance of having multiple skills, perfectly ties into what Andy's talking about. Yeah. Because here are these amazing, talented farmers that have over the generations inherited the most incredible skills. I don't know whether it's like pineapple, rice, coconut, whatever it is in the Philippines, because the agriculture there is so well developed. They know how to maximize, they know how to survive the typhoon, the droughts, the everything. But then what we forgot is that a business is not just about being great as a farmer. There's the business component, the emotional intelligence, the marketing, the sales. And I am literally getting daily phone calls and text messages from the Department of Agriculture over there in the Philippines just going, Paula, help us, help us, help us. Because Australia has exactly the opposite problem, Andy. We don't have the food. We don't have the farmers. And then you've got the Philippines. They've done all of the hard work. The fruits, the vegetables, everything is just ready to be distributed, but they forgot to commercialize. And then here we are wasting opportunity by not sharing our entrepreneurial skills, our knowledge, our skills. So I think we need to collaborate more in that space and understand that no matter how talented you are as an individual, you need to not apply for a job, you need to create a job. So if you have a job and you've survived over the last 12 months of job, congratulations, but it's your job to reinvent your job, identify new problems and build solutions, stay competitive, disrupt, not go back to the old normal like Dr. Faiz is saying. But most importantly is how can we think and act? It's about action, and think and act for solutions. Because what I'm saying is unfortunately, it's very sad what's happening to the farmers in the Philippines, but you can't just wait instead and just go, oh, my middleman can't transfer. It's just get out there. When I was very close to the women that remain on the ground there in the Philippines, it was incredible. There was women over Facebook selling stuff and posting it over to the United States. And some of them were drop shipping. Little grandmothers were using the microfinancing loans to drop ship to the United States from the Philippines. And some of the stuff, I'm like, is that even legal what you guys are sending? It was like food that they were making and reselling. I'm like, how are you even sending food wrapped in banana leaf over to the United States? They're like, oh yeah, we've got lots of customers in like San Francisco. I'm like, whoa. So there's so much opportunity there. But I see that every issue that we currently have, except for the vaccination, we have the skills to solve them. There shouldn't be anyone in poverty. There shouldn't be anyone like this is just, it's ridiculous that this is happening actually. Yeah. That's how I thought about it.
Given that and the gaps, and maybe this will this question will lead to your answer also, Dr. Vaiz, like, is there a, like an ecosystem that supports, all these, like multiple skilling, shifting mindsets, the ability to create, to convert problems into ideas and into businesses, and, like just a general direction towards business to solve a social problem? Do we have that startup? And maybe, I'll start with you, Dr. Faiz.
Well, thanks. I was just priming to say something to this, Faisal. Thank you.
Yeah.
This example that Paula gave is also very prevalent in Thailand. So there's two aspects to this conversation. One, in societies where the average person struggles to make a living, the ingenuity component, the entrepreneurial component is literally forced upon people. Otherwise, they wouldn't survive. There are no state benefits. There are no safety blankets or safety nets. There are no government subsidy schemes or huge inputs into social services that need to be generated. So people basically are out for themselves, literally. So the example that Paula gives exactly is very similar in so many countries, where war or famine or crises actually generate this resilience, which we now quote as an observation in COVID. On the other hand, more secure, more high trust, more economically developed societies end up unlearning this human survival instincts. And so some of the stories you hear about government handouts not working, people not being able to take advantage of the funds that have been created or the incentives that have been created is basically because they haven't begun to unlearn some of the things that people in the Philippines or Thailand or similar countries have never forgotten in the first place. So I think the ecosystem exists, but then it's a layered ecosystem where there has been the demand for social resilience. We have seen that they have coped better with COVID, as they have coped better with disease and famine and war and whatever have you. And where the state has taken responsibility for public welfare, public well-being, we've seen relatively poor response management and relatively fragmented responses to this. Again, it's relative to this crisis. Having said that, I'd like to come back to what Professor Yunus has said and written in recent months, which is about creating microeconomies. We've always had these microeconomies, but the big push towards globalization over the past 30 years or so has actually converted some of these microeconomies into cogs of large global economic wheels or machines. And a whole generation has learned to unlearn the local resilience of agriculture.
Yeah.
Government subsidies, global supply chains, value chains that pop from one to the other country seamlessly, literally, have sapped some of that resilience. So we simply need to find ways through government incentives, through policy incentives, and also like microcredit programs, local capacity building programs, reskilling programs, to ignite some of that resilience back, to create that unlearning phenomenon. And it will take time.
Yeah.
Once you get used to a more comfortable level, it's like flying first class and then hating economy class for the rest of your lives. It's something like that. And so we need to somehow reverse this. And this is where the biggest challenge is for those of us who've seen both sides really of this story. And what Callum is describing, or what you're talking about in terms of the local farmers, these are actually great case studies to now be taught to places where we've gotten too complacent with survival skills and livelihood skills and government welfare systems and so on. So I think for us, the challenge is now transformed into a human development challenge. There's enough money, by the way. If you look at the incentive packages that governments have been talking about, if you talk about the refinancing of enormous amounts of debt, the debt relief that banks are giving to people, the kind of the consumer spending that has shrunk, which has released a lot of savings, as Callum was saying. This is actually not a bad scenario if you look at it from a resilience point of view. It might be a very bad scenario from the typical GDP point of view, but it's not really a bad scenario from the survival and resilience point of view. So creating microeconomies, which now can be linked together with digital highways, as Professor Yunus has mentioned, is probably something we need to study a little bit more and expand a little bit more through our own experience in the Grameen family. And who knows, we'll come up like we have before with another couple of really great examples that other people would then begin to follow.
But we've noticed in your response is that there's really a big impetus on the government, especially on the subsidies and the incentives, and especially on creating microeconomies, and that also depends on how globalization can be trickled down into more domestic levels, and how non-state actors play in the socio-economic structures and systems of a particular country. But then when you talk about unlearning, there could be a cultural dimension to it. So apart from the government, is there any other, what other big component of the ecosystem is out there that supports all the other things that will ramp up the government? That will support the government incentives of creating microeconomies, for example. So anyone can answer that.
If you don't mind, may I just add to this? And I promise after this, I will not volunteer to speak. I just wanted to add one little aspect to the same, is that we need to redefine. What we've actually done is we've started calling social collateral patronage systems. We've started calling, what we used to call brotherhood bonds into, corruption enablers and so on. Yeah. At the root of these social devices was a sharing economy, shared success, and social value. But by redefining them into a different sociology, we've now made some of our human capacity building or human collateral building mechanisms look bad in the eyes of some people. So when you look after your neighbor, somebody will say, that's not fair. You have to have open competition, because we are confusing the advantages of a merit-based society with the demands of a survival economy.
That's right.
So when you confuse the nomenclature, when you redefine things into things that are no longer immediately relevant, like in times, they say everything is fair in love and war, right? These things are not wrong by far. So you need to redefine some of these contextual descriptions that we have developed for this emergency response, because we need patronage systems which are not corrupt. We need neighbors looking after neighbor and not having to advertise for a bunch of bananas to be sold, or stuff like that. So there are certain state systems, certain what we call merit or anti-corruption systems, which need to be again reconfigured to enable local economies to help each other out, the shared success aspect. And this is even a bigger policy challenge than any of us can ever imagine. So I just wanted to add that, and please, and I keep to my promise from now on.
Yeah, it's also similar to the study of international relations, where trust is really needed, knowing that especially in difficult times, insecurity is rampant, and there's really interests that need to be addressed here. So in addition, to the question on the ecosystem, beyond the government support, for example, the government side of the ecosystem, what other support or support structures are out there for social businesses to grow? Like Prometheus?
I would suggest right now, the most important thing is we have to think as a cross-industry basis. We can no longer have a for-profit, social sector, social enterprise. We have to have a bigger picture right now in mind. We have to think we are at a position right now where, where trillions of dollars have wiped out, and we cannot look at those dollar figures anymore. The single biggest threat to humanity in this new century has already been put forth to us. Now, the question is, are we going to have a concerted and a joint effort in response? We are sitting in Australia right now. We are still thinking one of our, that this may just be a very controversial comment, but I'll make it anyways. We still think, okay, the competition there in Asia, all right? And I won't mention the specific country, but we still think that there is a great threat which lies in Asia, which is going to wipe ourselves. And that is resonating through the political sphere, that is resonating through the economic spheres and all spheres of life. We have to take a collaborative approach. If it's a matter of national security, yes, that needs to be rethought. But apart from that, we just have to realize we are no longer competing with each other. If my business today is adding a certain value, I must be able to share it with a social entrepreneur, with a for-profit entrepreneur, anyone, who, no matter who it is. Because at the end of the day, if these incomes are falling, if jobs are disappearing, if businesses are failing, my market is disappearing in the future. The only person who's going to be benefiting, which Professor Yunus has been talking about over the last 5 to 10 years, is wealth concentration. All this will benefit at the end of the day, if we don't have a concerted effort, is wealth concentration. Is that the kind of a world we want to live in, is the question. If the answer to that is no, then we have to stop, thinking about these in silos and these lines. Those need to.
Yeah. Well, from a realist perspective, we don't have to fear, Prometheus. But now we're talking macro. But the thing is, like, we always talk about it should be this, it should be that, it should be like. But so how do we bring it to the micro level? Like, how do we build into every individual that kind of mindset? Because that's very important. Like, we talk about like government support, like the high macroeconomic level, but like, how would it be for example, the farmer here in the Philippines or in Thailand, or the women in Negros, for example, and in Bangladesh, and the women of south of Thailand? How will it be, like, how to change the mindset, to change the culture, even that, there will be trust in each other, that, we shouldn't be taking advantage of the other, that, business now should be about, of course, we need to make profit, but of course, it's also about promoting the massive wave of goodness and at the same time addressing the problem. Andy?
I'm just jumping for one.
Go ahead. Prometheus, yeah.
A simple example which has been happening in Grameen for quite a few years is a social business marketing company, which essentially acts like the middleman, which is, without basically taking away the price from the farmers, from the producers. There's a very simple solution available out there, and it's about replication. And I'm sure Andy will be able to, vet that and do that as well.
Andy?
Yeah, great question, Faiz. And I think go back to Dr. Faiz and creating a microeconomy. So focusing it, really putting the focus on working with these women, working with these communities, and they're establishing trust and making sure that, hey, they get their fair share, and you're looking after their development. They need to be able to see the value of what they're doing, and they need to be able to feel that, to reap the benefits of what they sow, right? You can't be, asking them to do this and then giving them just a small share of the pie. They need to be able to, reap those benefits, see the improvements in their lives and, what they do. So, and it, also, like, Dr. Faiz had a great example of, about microeconomies. We've been so focused on scale and growing these businesses as fast as we can so that we see the multiplier effect, that we sometimes forget to develop these ones first, make sure they're strong enough, they're robust enough to survive on their own before we start thinking of, making 10 of these, making 20 of these so that they grow as fast as we can. So, so I think it's just putting more concerted effort, I guess, and looking out after these communities, working with them, and really providing them with the skills that that they need.
Yeah.
And then to answer your question, I guess that's where also, that ecosystem that you were talking about, who is going to provide this for them?
Yeah.
So, and that's a big question that I think
we'll talk about that in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll stop there for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I would like to go to Callum. Like, of course, you're working. I mean, you have initiatives in the south of Thailand. I'm taking off from what Andy spoke about the value of development. I mean, especially in areas where people really people don't feel that development has trickled down to where they are. So how easy or how hard is it to convince them that, yes, this is the new way of doing things, and this is the new way that will, take you out of poverty? Because after so many years of, let's say, wallowing in poverty, and, with so much government support, so many organizations coming to them, why would they think that this is the kind of support that they need? That will, that will show that, yes, development works.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question, and it's not easy, right? I think if it was easy and there was a quick win, it would already have happened and it would already have been done. I mean, I think in terms of just to pick up on a couple of points, maybe to connect this all together. I think in terms of the ecosystem and ecosystem actors and how we kind of perceive UNIS Thailand, at least, and what our role is to a large perspective, we're a facilitator, right? And it's about connecting dots and facilitating positive actions. And I think there's also that comes with that as well is then also connecting this with what Andy was talking about you kind of have three aspects of scaling, right? You have scaling up where you make something bigger, you have scaling out where you're replicating, and what Andy's talking about and also what we value is kind of scaling deep, where you're looking at positive values, positive behaviors, and how can you actually support them, enhance them, and build these kind of resilient communities. Now, in terms of how does this work in, an area such as the south of Thailand, where this is, there's low levels of trust, there's, there's been issues with peace and these aspects. Well, basically, if it definitely doesn't work if a British person comes in. It definitely doesn't work also if someone from Bangkok comes in as well. So the idea is to have locally owned projects, have locally facilitated projects, supported and backstopped by kind of international expertise, international perspectives, national expertise as well. But it also, and again, it comes down to this values aspect, and it comes down to how you approach this, and the idea of being a facilitator is that basically it's about partnership and about building trust and about short-term wins within a long-term perspective and long-term planning as well. And I think when you look at social business and you look at microfinance, this is completely aligned with this perspective. It's about building mechanisms of resilience. It's about building aspects of partnership rather than patronage. It's about building exit points, but also maintaining a level of support and partnership as well, and level up opportunities as well. So I think it's and again, right, when we come back to, I think there's a key aspect as well when we look at the context of redefinition, what Dr. Fires was talking about as well. There's also a redefinition, and you see this with in the south of Thailand with big partners that have come in, where there's basically airdropping solutions in, when there's basically been looking at providing support rather than real, coming in for a long time, building grassroots partnerships And then, yeah, this key aspect of partnerships, not patronage, as well, is a key thing, I think. But yeah, not easy, takes a long time, and invest in trust.
Yeah. I want to pick on what you said about, how projects or programs like this should be locally facilitated. Like all of us here are mostly, shall we say, external actors to these initiatives. Like we come in our different capacities, in our different organizations. So I just want to ask, like, we were discussing about ecosystem and like the government support, like what other institutions are doing. What role has these communities really played in terms of, for example, because there is wisdom. I mean, if we remember how Professor Yunus started the Grameen Bank by lending, was it $27 to a few women? So it's like they have the wisdom. So sometimes we don't actually go there and tell them what to do because they know, they know stuff. They have knowledge and wisdom. It's just more of how we facilitate that to achieve, shared goals. So how is the role of the community here like really vital in this whole ecosystem perspective? So anyone can answer. Yeah. Unmute. Okay. Wait, we can't.
I was just dying to say something, which is communication. We just need to communicate more. Because again, most of the problems, if not all of the problems right now in the world, there are solutions, but are we communicating our needs? Like imagine if we go on LinkedIn and instead of just promoting a webinar that we're doing, we just go, these are my struggles. Who can help me? But also we need to communicate our wins because now more than ever, we need inspirational, positive case studies. And we can learn from each other. So if we spend more time like transparently communicating, not manipulating facts and data, just communicating. Every success story that you guys had in Thailand, I would love to hear all of them. Put them into podcast, YouTube, and then when the students at Accounts Fitness Sydney have a challenge, I just go, just listen to this podcast, just do this. The farmers that Andy's trying to help over in the Philippines, like we just need to communicate. And this is one thing, I remember, I know that you guys know me and you guys are always laughing at me for being too positive, but COVID hit, everybody was like, complaining, and I just went, grab every single student and let's write a case study on how they are succeeding. And we went from calling them legends to calling them unstoppable. So that became like the hashtag for a whole month. The first big month where everybody was depressed, we focused on sharing positive stories. And that has helped, because it's on social media, everybody can reach. It has helped not only our internal students from learn from each other, but the industry, other countries, and other institutions. And it became this global movement. But I wish we had more than that. Like, I love Prometheus, and I've called him a couple of times, like, oh my God, what do I do here? And he just shared a couple of stories of things that he had done. I just went, oh my God, I can totally copy paste that into our projects. And it's just stories. But it's about us knowing that, no, we don't have all the answers. Yes, we make mistakes literally every single day. And we all have, in one way or another, a skill that we can use to help towards someone else. And this is something that I realized in the first year that I set up Accounts Fitness. A lot of the things that I was doing, I'm like, it's common sense, it's common sense, it's common sense. It's common sense for me. But for a lot of people, it's the first time that they hear it. How can we communicate and give them the steps and tools and the connections for them to also succeed and not make the same mistakes that we made before it became common sense? So I think we need to spend more time having these conversations and just sharing case studies. Because whenever you're doing something, you never think it's good enough. But when you can communicate, maybe from an outside perspective, like the marketing agency that Prometheus was talking about, just get someone else to help you communicate your message, communicate your little wins, but in a way that we're educating others across the world. Like, I wish there was a platform where I would put, a keyword and would show up 100 entrepreneurs that need help in the keyword, and then I would donate, even if it's like 1 minute. 1 minute towards 3 different people. It feels good. I'm helping. I'm taking them out of this massive risk, taking them out of poverty, taking them out of bankruptcy. And all it takes sometimes it's 1 minute. So mentors, coaches, these case studies, Because I 100% believe that we have solutions for all of these problems, but we're not working as a global community. Everybody's just trying, and it's so hard when you have a problem, like your brain just blocks and starts repeating the problem, and it just goes in repetitive mode. As we know, we've got 80,000 thoughts a day, 80% of them are negative, and 95% are the same as the day before. So that means we're wasting our energy. Meanwhile, we could be rewiring ourselves to be more positive, give back, and help each other through the stories of all of our achievements. We can't just wake up and just go, what am I bad at? Just wake up and just go, how can I be better at the things I'm good at, and who can I help? But also, it's missing a platform where we can just like post ideas. That's not just social media showing off. It's a platform that we can just go, here's some case studies. Because I personally could write at least 100 case studies a day on success stories and little things that our legends have done that has helped them succeed or progress. Or they failed forward and we can learn from the failures. But we need to communicate more and connect that.
So that is something that we could discuss after the next question on the, so that's something that, moving forward after this panel discussion, after this social business youth summit, synergies on different initiatives that not just build awareness, but also really bring out the entrepreneurial mindset and, for people to build social businesses. If there's any, before anything else, I would like to highlight a question from the audience. Sheila asked the question, what sort of social business opportunities can help in crisis management if such a problem like this pandemic arises in the future? So anyone can answer.
I'll take a first shot at this.
Yeah.
Now, if the pandemic is hit, how has it affected your life first? Like the society that we live in, say, an Australian society, and we don't really feel it very often. Housing is a very big crisis. Housing affordability and housing is a major crisis. And pandemic has probably brought this a bit, forward to us, but it has existed over the last 2 decades. Now, the question is, are we going to tap into the mindset of all of these builders and landowners and things like that, telling them, yes, if you're building a certain block of land, trying to develop it, selling it, and trying to make millions of dollars in it, are you also going to then, the government has to be involved, instead of setting up these social, housing areas which are not perhaps perceived the best and things like that, can you genuinely create affordable housing solutions? We had a builder come to us, 2 years ago, who actually came up with fabrication materials, who actually had genuine ideas of trying to build, say, a 600 square meter, unit, or, an 800 square meter unit. That was genuinely possible. Now, the only reason why that is not happening is everyone who's in the industry is preventing that from happening because others are going to basically lose out a market. Now, this is where, in trying to address, is a social business going to solve a problem in a pandemic? Absolutely, it will. But we must change our behavior. If we don't change our behavior in trying to tackling problems, the next response will be as good or as bad as it has been. These change in behaviors of the governments, of the regulators, of the market players, which need to change first before social businesses or social enterprises can become more effective.
Yeah. So this leads us to the next question, which is, so what are the kinds of support that we should be giving? Like, we represent different organizations, and we have different capacities and skill sets and resources at our disposal. So what can we contribute? What can we contribute personally and as an institution? So I would like to start with Dr. Faiz, because he promised not to, say something after his.
You're having me break my promise now.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you. I think yes, we do need to sort of think beyond, and I again must confess that we communication is all. It's all about communication. But I would like to add a caveat to that, and that is that context is important as well. Now, if you look at the two questions in the chat box, for instance, both of those questions would have completely different answers if we related them to a particular context. What high school leaver trying to start a school business? Are they in Australia? Are they in Thailand? Are they in the UK? Are they in the Philippines? Are they somewhere else? Because the context of high school leavers starting new businesses is enormously different in each of the countries that I mentioned, and there could be even greater disparities. For some, this is an automatic transition from high school. People don't think in you've seen it in Bangladesh. I've seen it in my country of Pakistan, Philippines. There's a lot of young fellows for whom when their opportunity to get state-funded schooling ends, government jobs are not available. They can't go and join like a relatively secure long-term proposition. They start a business or help a relative that has a business, or end up working with somebody that has some kind of an enterprise. This is very typical to some of our, developing country contexts. On the other hand, if you are in a more advanced economic environment, you probably get the high school person to do something completely different because social safety nets operate differently. So for me, I think to take that like as an example of how context is so important. And the same is true for for Sheila's question about social business opportunities. For once, this is a question that is enormously difficult to contextualize. Why are we worried about the next pandemic in the future? We haven't even figured out this one yet. And it's going to be for a while, that we're still going to be grappling with the present state of this pandemic, not only what will happen after. I can't see an after, frankly, coming very soon. So for me, this is the here and now, and this here and now will spread over a couple of years. And what social business opportunities are going to be inherent in that is what we are talking about. So transition from relatively complacent mindsets, taking the challenge, back to the wall thinking, reskilling, creating ecosystems that redefine how our society basically interacts at various levels and so on. Each of these is a huge challenge. And if you put this into context, the hugeness of the pandemic pales in front of the hugeness of these changes that we're confronted with. So I just wanted to leave you even more confused, these two people who ask questions. It's a huge thing. But coming to Faisal's question about what we can actually do, I think I can give you a quick short and a sort of offer here, Paula particularly, and those of our friends who are watching. We have a program that both Faisal and Callum have been resource persons in, and that is the case writing workshop series. Normally, when we write cases or working cases or teaching cases, they're written by academics for academics, and so they're very complicated. And if your benchmark is, say, the average Harvard Business School case, then you're looking at a very advanced form of analysis, a very advanced form of contextualization, analysis, and articulation, and so on, and multiple learning levels to be responded. What we have discovered in Bangladesh, and to some extent in Malaysia and Thailand, is that the case studies that Paula talks about are easy, simple, not multi, but unidimensional problems and their solutions bundled into very easy to understand examples, and large numbers of them coming out quickly. So I can immediately maybe say, those of us who are interested in building cases, role models, examples, illustrations, or even quasi-simulations and so on, there is a product that we have that we could very easily roll out. And so that's your first can do in a more tangible way. But on the other hand, what else we can do? I think we have identified 2 or 3 problems. One is context, one is communication, and one is scale. And different people have said this in different ways. But I particularly like the idea of building this communication into an idiom that is not doom and gloom, that is not back to the wall crisis management. And of course, maybe it's not also overly optimistic, because some people are afraid of optimism. That's also been a subject of research. If there are people, you give them too much optimism in low trust societies, people begin to feel afraid. In high trust societies, it has a completely different thing. So yes, we should build communication mechanisms, systems, communication tools, which allow people to understand each other better, absolutely. And as the global social business family, we have the common language of social business. We have the common language of how we transact in shared success situations, in shared value situations. So that is an advantage we could leverage. And as somebody, I think it was Prometheus said, collectively this is possible, and we are a collective in many ways. The second thing is scaling deep. I think that's also very poignant in this particular way, because the way we have managed our economic lives is building less and less trust by creating external standardizations and reporting mechanisms and disclosure mechanisms and government-supported regulatory frameworks and so on, and industry codes of conduct and all that. These are all substitutes for trust, but they're also drivers of a lack of trust and so on. So again, as a social business family that creates or lives by certain well-understood social sharing values, we have the other advantage of building this kind of levels of trust, so that we create mechanisms when we scale deep, we actually expand laterally, and then from that we expand upwards as well. So that, and the third thing I think, which I wanted to say that we can easily do, is somehow contextualize the message of social business. In Thailand, for instance, they call it social enterprise. But if you ask a Thai what it is that social enterprise is, they'll give you Professor Yunus's definition. So we need to also understand that there will be contextualization issues. Now, if you start calling something social business in Thailand, people will not understand. But if you talk to them about social enterprise, they will immediately start relating it to what every one of us in this conversation automatically assumes to be social business. So again, that level, so all these three things tie into the Grameen way, the Grameen values, in a very interesting way. And as living, working outfits that propel this value system, each of these three elements can be built into our programming at the design level. So maybe it's doable differently in different places. But how Callum is doing it in the south of Thailand, or as Andy is doing it in Bacolod, or as some of our, the programs that Paula, you're running in Australia, for instance, we can all work through the same value propositions to be expanded through the systems, but they will all have the same effect of deepening the value system, enhancing the sharing and caring nature of our work, and also somehow further integrating this idea of shared success. But we'll all do it differently in different places, coming to eventually to the same, hopefully the same conclusion. So yeah, that's probably my take on this immediate steps to build this change. And it's a huge challenge, again, as I keep saying. It's right. Probably, it transcends a lifetime even.
Yeah, but I would like to push this further, Dr. Faiz. Like, how do these things, the three things you mentioned, contribute to, you have a new program, right? We could take this opportunity, like, for all of us listening here now, that this is a program that we could, have as, to like part of contextualizing social business in different areas in the world.
I thought you'd never ask, Callum.
No,
sorry, Faisal. Actually, the program that I would like to is actually going to talk about. It's built around this idea of what I just mentioned, building the kind of context that drives scale through a form of communication that we popularly call education. Yeah. So I think it's perfectly timed question. Yeah. After a number of years, we've been 2011. Professor Yunus talked about having a qualification in social business. And I don't know, Prometheus, if you remember, this was at the Bogobandhu Center in Dhaka.
Yes, I remember.
Right. And he said that I want to see a day when social business education will go to the people rather than people having to come to a classroom. Well, COVID helped us do that, right? But at the same time, we were trying to build this model where people could study where they are, but they would be able to qualify for university accredited education. And so fortunately, and finally through a series and series of relatively complex academic exercises, the Asian Institute of Technology has finally accredited a program. It's a professional master's program. It's 1 year of academic work and 6 months of incubator work. So what we've learned across the world, in what were the various gaps, we studied more than 75 master's programs that teach social enterprise in 1 or 2, 3 ways, and 400 short programs that brought this. And from that, we realized that what Professor Yunus would call an ideal social business program required sustainability concepts, which they could then imbibe and live with, which includes gender and natural resource management, practically all the SDGs. So if you look at the hard business education, there's very little emphasis given on this deep sustainability conversations. On the other hand, if you go to development studies programs in schools, the skills you need to survive in a cutthroat competitive market are very, very seldom given any in-depth treatment. But then on the other hand, neither of these programs have inbuilt practicums and practical exposure opportunities where you can learn by doing or making mistakes and then being allowed to unpack what you've learned into a doable business. So we brought these 3 elements together in this program. So the School of Management teaches a core of hard business things like finance and marketing and so on. The School of Sustainability and Development teaches, well, policy, planning, sustainability, and some certain electives which cover some of the things that we do in our social businesses. And then there's a social business design program where they go into an incubator situation. We call it the sandbox. And for 6 months, they actually put what they've learned in sustainability and management education into a social business design, which then presented is your final exam. So we've done triangulated these 3 things into one program. I'm not saying that this is something that's, nobody would have done it, but the way our academic systems work, everything is very siloed. They're very good at what they do, but then there are very few trans or interdisciplinary links that build comprehensible links across schools and programs and research centers. So AIT has been one of those kind of pioneers in which they've actually broken down the barriers between these very, very specialized schools. And thanks to the Yunus philosophy, brought in this integration of these 3 pillars, as we call them. And then through each of them, there is something which we call, which is found in no other program. And that is the Yunus Colloquium. For 1 month every year, Professor Yunus has very kindly said he will give time to the Yunus master students to come to Dhaka as soon as they can do that and spend 1 full month with Professor Yunus, visiting the Grameen businesses, talking to people, engaging with the Noben entrepreneurs, and seeing with their own eyes how social business transforms lives. So imagine a program which had the top school in Thailand offering the business program, the top 2% ranked faculty in development offering the development component, and Professor Yunus himself leading the inspirational, what we call the Yunus Colloquium, and the Yunus Thailand and our Yunus centers providing the practical, what you might say, experimentation to get these guys really hone their social business program. I'm very proud of this program. And the 2 of you that I see here have been part of this thinking. And I'm hoping they will, and Prometheus and Paul, all of you will become part of this program. It's being launched in August. And maybe, thanks for asking this question. I probably wouldn't have given this kind of a thing. So it's not a paid advertisement, guys, but I thought it was appropriate to mention it. And we're very excited about this program. And the fact that Professor Yunus has himself led this kind of the thinking process, it makes it actually a very unique program.
That's right. That's a great opportunity. Now I have to come to you, Paula, from your end about the question.
Thought having been raised in developing countries and like my heart is 100% towards developing countries. Like I'm in Australia today, but everybody knows that on the first plane that I can to go back to developing country, I will be there. But there's this business that this girl from Hong Kong that was living here in Australia set up called B1G1, which is buy one, give one. It's very successful. And I think we need to work towards that model of buy one, give one. However, not give, because we can't give the fish. We need to teach them how to fish. So one of my biggest life goals and dreams, it's something that I'm trying to hack, and people listen to it, but no one is like taking it serious, which is I wish that every student around the world wouldn't graduate until they taught someone else. Because I can study, I can do a test. That doesn't mean that I've learned. Now imagine if every student that studies entrepreneurship. So one thing is learning, another thing is applying into, let's say, your business or in the hospital if you're going to be a doctor or a painter. But it takes it to a whole different level. Like say you're a painter, you've learned how to paint, you paint something beautifully. But for you to graduate, you need to teach someone else the techniques, which automatically will improve the quality of your technique and the strategy behind it. So I wish there was a model like that for literally every industry. For the farmer, like the buy one, give one, but you're not giving food. You're teaching someone else, taking them out of poverty and teaching them if they want to learn as well. It's all about like asking what you want to learn, not just what I want to teach. But I wish that there was a model like that for the whole world where it became a rule that it's buy one, give one. Because I see that, like I was driving behind a bus yesterday and I saw like, oh, you buy this, I'm not going to say the brand, but you buy this sandwich and it's giving to someone else. I'm like, I don't want to give a sandwich to someone else. I want to teach that someone else how to make their own sandwich, which goes back to the whole microfinance of the $27 where these women have rebuilt communities, their lives and their families. But we need more of that, like the buy one, give one, where we're not giving, but we're educating and empowering in a sustainable way. I know how it can work in education, but I don't know how it's going to work in every other sector. But I've been seeing a little bit in tourism, not a little, a lot in tourism, like sustainable tourism, but in a way that we travel responsibly. Like Callum was talking about, like it's not just about the money that you saved, like staying in a 5-star hotel, is how do you stay in a 3-star hotel and you help the staff, I don't know, like build something in the community. You're building a school or you're building a farm or an organic little like garden in the back. So I would love to see something like that. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems in the world.
Yeah. So we're being reminded that at 3:40 Bangladesh time, we will go offline. So probably just a quick note, Andy, on like a part of the ecosystem and what you want to announce. Maybe like 30 seconds to 1 minute.
No, just a quick there. Like, thank you, Faisal. But yeah, so I guess as part of that, as part of developing the ecosystem here, specifically in Negros, Faisal and I, with a couple of friends as well, you know, we're looking to really make Negros like a stronghold for social business, social entrepreneurship. So Faisal and I are part of a group called the Negros Spokes. We'll be promoting entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship awareness, trying to find talent, trying to cultivate talent, and trying to develop talent so that they can become the next, you know, wave of social business entrepreneurs here.
Yeah. Okay. So I know, Prometheus, I know you have some points to take, but let me just take this opportunity to ask the final question, and that's why I'll start with you. So, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, I want to change the world. I want to change the world. So, but then they're still anxious of where to start, how to start. This is actually similar to the question here on what do you think about someone in high school trying to start his own social business. So what is your advice to those who are still anxious but are passionate for change? I start with you, Prometheus. Yeah. You're muted.
Sorry, 4 very concrete things I leave as a challenge to all the participants in our discussions here and for everyone. Number 1, someone who's in high school, reach out to us here in Australia or wherever you are, reach out to the Yunus Center. How can you set up your first social business club in your high school? If you don't start talking about what is social business and how that is different and how that makes you as a different entrepreneur, get that dialogue going. If you want to make the change, you need to start talking about it. And I leave that challenge. Whoever can start their first social business club in their high schools. Second, Dana Asia is running its Grameen Microcredit program in Grameen, Philippines. if anyone is out there who can connect, the borrowers that we have there to the newer markets, that is your chance to be able to contribute to what we are doing there. Third, in Australia, we are trying to set up a microcredit model. Okay, what role will you play in advocating to the government that the regulations in the name of control need to go down? You cannot treat a microcredit model or a social business as a second-class business model or a second-class, citizen, and it needs to be maintained. It needs to be brought to the mainstream. So these are the three challenges or the three pointers that I leave with all our listeners here. If you can do these concrete three things, that's your first foray onto how you can be a part of the bigger movement.
Thank you, Prometheus. Callum?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. I think there's something that definitely resounds in my mind that Professor Yunus basically once said to me and a group of people, which is basically in social business, we're doers. And I think it's a very, very simple point, and there's not a lot of complexity in this, but it's so profound and so important because there's so many people, and I've been guilty of this, and I'm sure everybody has been guilty of this, where we've had great ideas and we've said we're going to do something, and then for some reason or the other, we've just not done it. And that happens on a daily basis, weekly basis, many different things. But I think the main thing that I would say is set yourself a challenge to be a doer. Doesn't have to be anything big, doesn't have to be anything complex, but just say you're gonna, if you want to do something and if you have something in mind, just actually set the bar. If you actually have to take an action on this. And I think if you can take that small but very important step, then there's so many people and that can help you, that can support you. We're all here, and I can speak for myself, and I know I can also speak for all my other friends on this call, that you can reach out to any of us. We're all happy to give you advice. We're all happy. If we can't give you the answer, we know many other people as well. So the support's there. The main point is that mental shift from saying you're going to do something to actually doing it. So simple point, but I think it's the most important one.
Thank you, Callum. And I would like to really say that you have made me and Andy ecosystem builders now. Yeah. So I'll go to Andy for your final point. Your call to action.
Sorry. Yeah. Just to build on what Callum said. Just simply do it. Do it. Doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in the Philippines or in Bangkok or in the UK, in Australia, in Bangladesh, or in anywhere in the world. Your social business family, there's always going to be someone there to help you. So, you're not going to be alone in this journey. So just do it.
Thank you, Andy. Dr. Faiz?
Okay, well, of course. There are two words that were said by different people here that have actually brought back to me this idea that we've been talking about it. You've all heard this. And this is remember the social business collaboration challenge idea?
Yeah.
As we talked about this, again, this was brought up in Dhaka in a number of conversations. And the world seemed not to be ready for it because everybody was having these idea competitions and this competition and that competition. And we said, but we're talking collaboration. Why is everybody competing? Maybe now is the time. I'll dust out the draft that I did some years ago. And this is called the Social Business Collaboration Challenge. So I'd like to invite, at least from this panel and anybody else that's in there, to let's redefine this. Let's rewrite stuff that's changed over these few years and actually launch a collaboration challenge where people with great ideas don't compete. They collaborate, because that is the way human beings were designed. That's the way how we survived as a civilization and how we actually beat out the poor, Neanderthals and the others. We collaborated, they didn't. And so, we're now at the point where maybe the world's come round to considering collaboration as a viable strategy for survival. So
Thank you.
watch this space, as I say, Faisal, and please ask everybody to keep in touch. And who knows, we'll throw this out towards the end of the year. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, Paula, your final inspirational challenge.
Also, the impact that you can create in the world. You're the boss of your health, the positivity of reshaping society, and we can't wait for change. We need to act on it, like Andy's saying, straight away. So yes, let's go. Let's unite our forces, collaborate, disrupt, never stop. If we fail, we're failing forward, but we need to take action. Let's step forward every single day. Definitely. Boss your future, boss your future, boss your future.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been a great discussion, and it doesn't stop here. We continue our engagements. We continue to seek out collaboration. We communicate. We let out the goodness. And can we say it all aloud? No going back. Once again, no going back.
And can we take a screenshot, guys?
Yeah. I don't know how to do that. So who can do it? Yeah.
Rom's going to do it.
Who's doing it?
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll give it a shot.
I don't know how to do this either. I want to pose for them.
Okay, why?
I'll do a YY, guys. Just give me 1 second. I'll have the Unison U logo and I'll do this.
Okay.
I think I've done this. Let me have a quick look.
1, 2.
Sorry, guys. Just give me 1 second. I'm giving it my final shot.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Faisal.
Have a great
guys.
weekend. Have a great weekend to everyone.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Wonderful to see you all.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Congrats,
Bye-bye.
Faisal, Andy. Go Spokes.
See you March 3.
See you, mate. See you guys. See you, Paula. See you, Prometheus. See you soon, Dr. Fires.
See you guys. See you, Callum.